Okay, so welcome to the world of technology. Oh my gosh, it's almost midnight. I'm going to work at getting through this in just a few minutes. I am having to rebroadcast my episode, my second episode, because I've had a bit of technical difficulty earlier this week, and I didn't autosave, so this broadcast of Save Big Mama's House was lost, and I decided to make a few adjustments, but I'm going to rebroadcast a few things that I discussed last week. So, hello, my name is Cheryl Ellison Pons, also known as the Urban Real Estate Starlet, and welcome to my show or my video blog, Save Big Mama's House. If there's anyone out there, I would love for you to push the heart button to let me know that you're watching. I'd appreciate it. UrbanREStarlet.com. It's spelled UrbanREStarlet.com. Is a real estate education site. Our specialty is property protection, and we're pretty much set up to help inner city families understand how the gentrification game works. And Save Big Mama's House is a conversation basically to encourage you to do exactly that, save Big Mama's house. So I started this vlog as a means to connect with longtime urban residents and property owners, because in multiple markets there's a lot of stuff happening, and many of you are not participating, and you're losing the opportunity to build wealth for your family. And wealth can look like a number of things, but one of the things it looks like basically staying out of debt and leveraging the assets you have into cash flows so that you can do the things that you really want. Many of you are also feeling the pressure of tax bills, real estate speculators, family squabbles, and also, of course, I mentioned before, gentrification. And I created this video blog to help you discover winning solutions for what sometimes seems unanswerable questions. Many of you are also in situations where you believe that selling off your property will make your headaches go away. But you really don't know what's on the other side of selling off your assets, your family assets. And in many cases, folks end up selling what they already have in their hand for pennies on a dollar, and with just a tad bit of knowledge about core real estate principles, they can not only appreciate the assets way over above the market value today, but also reap the benefits of cash flows coming out of their household assets. And some of you have probably experienced the same thing I went through with my family when we lost my Big Mama's house. That would be my grandmother. She owned an estate. Well, it was our estate. It became an estate when she transitioned. But she owned a beautiful detached home in Savannah, Georgia, in the Victorian district. It was a Victorian style home, and we lost it. She died, and her heirs started fighting, which would be my dad and his brothers, and there was a family squabble. And by the time the house came out of probate, no one was really speaking to each other, and the tax bill came up and no one wanted to pay it. So we had a tax lien on the estate. So in order not to lose everything on the property, we sold it for pennies on the dollar for probably less than $30,000 back in the early 90s. But that house today is worth more than $300,000. But what is most sad about the whole situation, if we had held on to that property and did the proper renovations, we could have amassed cash flows exceeding $500,000 over a period of time. I see that, oh, that's Julian. Join me. Thank you for joining me. If you can hit that heart button, I'd appreciate it. So I'm not here to talk about tales of woe. What I'd like to do is kick off my series, my series called 5 Key Tactics to Save Big Mama's House. And the first principle is work with what you have. And tonight, that's what I'm going to talk about, or at least start talking about it. Work with what you have and why you should work with what you have. And it's a conversation about how you start making your Big Mama's house your family's secret to building generational wealth. Hello, how are you doing? The second principle is stop the neighborhood tours. The third principle is it's your castle, live like it is one. The fourth one is enhance your curb appeal, enhance the value. And the fifth principle is stand up to the tax man. That's the one I'm most excited about. So, as I mentioned before, the first principle is work with what you have. And so that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to talk about working with what we have. So, it is better, you've heard the old adage, a bird in hand is better than two in the bush, okay? And that's basically what working with what you have is all about. Is leveraging the asset that you already have that's already in your family's possession. Work with that instead of looking elsewhere for something that you already possess. There's this old story about the man who sold everything he had in search of diamonds. And as it turned out, the individual that purchased his home did some digging in his backyard and found out his house was in fact a diamond field. So what I'm sharing with you is that if you do a little digging with your own estate, you will, no, I'm not going to flash you. You will, you will find the diamonds that are in your house. Okay, so let's talk about work with the assets that you have. I'm suggesting that you don't dispose of the Big Mama's house when you inherit it or when it comes into your possession, just to pursue greener pastures. Because if you live in a market like Washington, D.C., you may have you have the option of leaving the inconvenience of the city and its amenities in exchange to go into a development or a community like Upper Marlboro, which is really a small town, or Bowie. And New Yorkers move from their 2 and 3 family homes. They go from the burbs into Nassau, Westchester, or Rockland counties. But many of them are leaving brownstones and limestone buildings to go into these more palatial, what they believe is more palatial digs, but they're trading it off typically for long commutes, higher transportation costs, and sometimes higher property taxes. Now, that's all great if you want to improve the quality of life, but think of it this way. What if your Big Mama's house has little or no debt attached to it? Like there are no liens, or the liens are minimal. You can take care of that. Or there's no mortgage and there's no pressure. What happens to your quality of life if you're living in a situation like that? Now, one of the 3 reasons that I really believe you should save Big Mama's house is very practical. And that reason is because you will lower your housing costs. That immediately goes through the floor when you decide to save Big Mama's house. Because in a lot of urban situations, it's not so much the house that's the value, it's what the house is sitting on top of, the land. So you're not going to renovate the land, you're going to renovate the house. For example, in markets like New York, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., and maybe even Chicago, some people are spending anywhere from 33 to 50% of their income their household income on keeping a roof over head, over shelter. That's just the ceiling, the walls, and the floors. Up to 50% of their salary. And some people, it's even more than that. And we're not talking about folks who are living in affordable housing situations. We're talking about people who are making what was once perceived as serious money, but they're finding now that the cost to rent is so expensive, they really need to look at other things. But why not look at what your family already owns? So let's say that you take on your big mama's single family home, whether that's a townhouse, a semi-detached, or a standalone unit, okay, or even a condo. Now, I took a number that at $250,000, right? So $250,000, that is renovating the house, landscaping, maybe even moving some walls around, some beams around, getting that kitchen done, getting those, expanding it so you have a real ensuite master bedroom and perhaps some additional bathrooms, right? $250,000 will probably get you that in a lot of markets. So I'm just taking that for one example. And let's just assume Big Mama's house has no debt on it and is 100% equity. So basically you could, for this amount of money, if you take a loan out, for this amount of money, for $250,000, you can trick that house out to make it look like an episode in HG television, or for my girl Cheryl Scruggs, an engagement with Bronze Interior. Sure, I'm just giving you a shout out there. And let's assume that $250,000 at 4% interest, and you have a FICO score of, that's average, anywhere from 670 to 690 points. Your average mortgage payments on that $250,000 after when you've renovated that house will be $1,200 a month or less. That's the mortgage. It's not including the taxes. But by the time you add the taxes on and all the other things that cost for you to manage or make that home inhabitable, it will be significantly less than what it would be if you moved out to the suburbs and spent over $500,000 on a 5-bedroom house. Now, I don't know about you, but when I look at $1,200 to $1,300 a month on rent, I'm like, where are you going to get that? Where are you going to live for $1,200 or $1,300 a month in any up-and-coming trendy neighborhood? It's not happening. But the crazy part about it, those up-and-coming trendy neighborhoods are the very neighborhoods that your family probably owns property in. So, lesson number one is just rethink not taking on Big Mama's house. When you look at the money that you will save and all the other things that you will be able to do, thank you for the hearts, I really appreciate it, all the other things you were able to do because you saved your housing costs, you will do whatever you can to get into Big Mama's house. So next week, we're going to continue with part 2 of this conversation about, on work with what you have, which is a primary reason why you should save Big Mama's house. And everyone, thank you so much for listening. This was a redo of episode 2. I'm glad it's over with. I appreciate your following me tonight, and follow me on Twitter at UrbanREStarlet, and of course follow me on Periscope, and I'm also on Facebook at UrbanREStarlet.com. That would be UrbanREStarlet.com. Have a blessed evening and go get them at work tomorrow. All right, I'll talk to you later.